Fight for another episode of Boxing News Today. And let's start off with the tragic story of Jarrell Miller. As you all know, I had high hopes for him before he went to Saudi Arabia to fight with Daniel Dubois, a fight he ultimately lost. But I'm on the record as saying somewhere uh, that I had high hopes for him. I thought he actually might beat Daniel Dubois. I assumed, of course, he was going to be training for that fight and would be in good shape for that fight, having come off such a movie worthy story where he was about to fight Anthony Joshua, got pulled out of that fight because of drug related issues, could have fought him again, but didn't. Andy Ruiz took Jarrell Miller's spot, picked up that $5 million purse. And as far as Jarrell Miller's concerned, his next option was to fight, courtesy of the Saudis, Daniel Dubois. No more than a week later, and having previously spoken to you guys about possibly being hacked by establishing a GoFundMe page in his honor, requiring, I think, 150,000 US. A few days after that, he's now been arrested, and as far as I know, is still sitting in jail because no one's bailing him out anytime soon. Why? Because apparently his car got repossessed, and he obviously marched off down to the repo dealer and said, "I want my car back." They obviously said no. So he put the young fellow in a chokehold, threw him to the ground, took the keys to the car, and off he went. Now, just like in the movies, the car has a GPS locator. So it wasn't too hard for the police to track him down in Florida. He didn't get too far. Where now this would be the movie scene. He's 330 pounds, as you all know. Your average policeman that I know isn't quite that big. And I'm sure they didn't know who they were actually chasing. But nonetheless, he got arrested. And apparently peacefully, I assume. There wasn't any reports of assaulting a police officer. So he got nabbed and charged with carjacking, and of course the assault on the poor fellow behind the desk at the dealership slash repo dealership. I don't know whether it's take a scene out of a movie here called Repo Man and put two and two together. And Jarrell Miller was not a happy camper seeing his car go down the road in someone else's hands. So he took matters into his own hands and went after that car, took it back, and ultimately ended up in jail awaiting bail. There you have it. It's got to be a movie. Let's move on to other boxing news. Gabriela Fundura, great fighter, and she's about to fight Marlen Esparza for the undisputed flyweight championship. This is going to take place in Las Vegas. As I said, undisputed for all the belts. January 6th promises to be a historic moment because it will be the first time all four major flyweight titles are unified in the women's division. Both Esparza and Fundora are undefeated champions, making this a highly anticipated showdown. Esparza is 14-1 with one knockout. An American professional from Houston, currently ESPN's number one ranked flyweight. She holds the WBC, WBA, and Ring Magazine female flyweight titles and made history as the first American woman to qualify for the Olympics in women's boxing and won a bronze medal at the 2012 London Olympics, where Katie Taylor won gold. Esparza earned additional accolades as a bronze medalist at the 2006 Women's World Boxing Championship and a gold medal at the 2014 AIBA Women's World Boxing Championships. Certainly known for technical skills and high boxing IQ inside the ring. Fundora, 12-0, 5 knockouts from California, is trained by her father, Freddie Fundura, and is the younger sister of Sebastian Fundora, the former junior middleweight interim champ. She is ranked number 2 by ESPN and has fought 3 times in 2023 including a fifth-round technical knockout victory over Arely Messina in October. Fundura may use her power and aggression over her opponent during the fight. And Fundura is very tall, said reporter Cynthia Conte in Media Reports. Fundura is very tall, bright, and a shining star. She put on one hell of a performance against the reigning champion. They made her quit and throw in the towel. Fundura has power, reach, excellent ring IQ, throws from angles, and she's surrounding you, said Fundura. We just stayed calm after her last win. We're not going to go in rushing the fight. It's not smart. We just stay calm, stay focused, and stay in attack. And honestly, at the end of the first round, we saw she was hurt. So I knew from there it was going to be a long night, Fundura added. So the fight will crown the first ever undisputed flyweight champion and the lightest fully unified queen among all women in boxing. That adds to my story about the atom weights going toe-to-toe upcoming as well. Anyway, let's talk about Anthony Joshua. Okay, following his recent stoppage win against Otto Wallen, AJ's promoter Eddie Hearn indicated AJ likely fight again in March, and he listed three possible opponents, which we've all mentioned and talked about: Filip Hrgovic, Francis Ngannou, and Zhilei Big Bang Zhang. Whichever opponent is ultimately chosen is a very good sign for Joshua if it means he's going to remain active as he promises, and he's done since suffering back-to-back defeats at the hands of Oleksandr Usyk. Then the expectation was that the day of reckoning would finally lead to a long-awaited mega bout showdown between Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder. But those best-laid plans were ultimately derailed when Wilder lost his decision against Joseph Parker. With the Wilder fight now out for AJ's March return, the three names mentioned all represent interesting potential foes for the former two-time heavyweight champion. Let's have a quick look here. Filip Hrgovic. Now, this is interesting. Filip Hrgovic is the number one IBF heavyweight mandatory contender, and the IBF is theoretically up next in rotation, and that means Hrgovic should get a title shot sooner than later. The expectation here is that after Tyson Fury and Oleksandr Usyk have had their first fight in February, that the IBF will immediately strip the winner, and that Hrgovic will face someone for the vacant IBF strap. So theoretically, a March showdown between Joshua and Hrgovic could be for the vacant IBF belt. Francis Ngannou, who has only one professional boxing match, and that happened last year when he put up a strong effort against Tyson Fury. Indeed, Ngannou even managed to score a knockdown against Fury, and there were some observers who believed Ngannou did enough to deserve the win against Fury. And finally, we have Big Bang Zhang, one of my favorites. A 40-year-old, though, Chinese powerhouse who had a career breakthrough last year, following back-to-back victories against highly regarded Joe Joyce. Zhang is a highly respected, talented fighter despite his advanced age, and these two have a history from their amateur days in the Olympics, which adds to an added layer of potential interest. So will Anthony Joshua want to re-engage with Zhang? Let's wait and see. I would like to see it, though. But who will AJ face next? Hrgovic, Ngannou, or Zhang? Lay down your comments. Let's see what you have to say about that. Just so you know, the winner, because Fury and Usyk have signed on for a 2-fight deal, the winner of that first fight would have to lose their IBF title, being unable to face mandatory challenger Hrgovic. And that is why Hrgovic would, in fact, be a potential candidate for Anthony Joshua to fight. Now, why Anthony Joshua would want to fight Hrgovic is beyond me. But I guess I was going to say it would be an easy win for Joshua, but we'll wait and see. And then Ngannou has expressed his interest in remaining in boxing with a rematch against Fury, and also touted a Joshua fight as his next. So let's see what he has to say in this whole mix. And as we know, Zhang has consecutive stoppage wins over Joe Joyce. So 3 potential opponents for Anthony Joshua, and it's going to be a good decision, and I'm sure a good fight no matter which one is selected. My thought here is it'll all boil down to money. And recently, the Saudis have expressed great interest in continuing a heavyweight series or even establishing a heavyweight league to be held exclusively in Saudi Arabia. So we'll see where it all goes. Speaking of Zhilai Zhang, let's talk about him for a sec, because Filip Hrgovic did derail his plans a few years ago. It was controversial, and the heavyweight contender was forced to stomach the first defeat of his career despite dropping his man in the first round. Getting down on himself was an option for Zhang, but he didn't see the point. He simply dusted himself off and went back to the drawing board instead of taking on a tenuous, no-name opponent. Zhang, as we all know, jumped right back into the deep end and had his 2 fights against Joe Joyce, who at the time was on an incredible streak. He held the WBO interim strap and was seemingly just a fight away from fighting for that full title. Zhang was viewed as an innocuous speed bump and a mere blimp on the radar. However, after rocking and stopping Joyce on consecutive occasions, Zhang now finds himself in a position of power. So the 40-year-old has spent a ton of his recent time sifting through the heavyweight landscape. Of course, Zhang, 26-101, 21 knockouts, has 4 names that he'd love to share the ring with: Tyson Fury, Oleksandr Usyk, Anthony Joshua, and Filip Hrgovic. But unfortunately for Zhang, those 4 fighters are ostensibly entertaining other matchups. Usyk and Fury have signed that 2-fight deal. Joshua and Hrgovic could get in over the next IBF strap, as I said. So with those names presumably off the table, Joseph Parker is now protruding towards the top of Zhang's hit list. So his interest in fighting Parker comes on his recent upset win over former champ Deontay Wilder, which derailed AJ's big money fight night over in Saudi Arabia in March. Parker may not be his preferred option, but for Zhang, he may very well be the next best available opponent he can get his hands on without a doubt. Said Zhang, Parker might be a good option. Right now, he's hot. Now, everybody's looking at him. He's really good. If I can't get any of those other guys, then Joseph Parker would be a good option. Now, speaking of options, Jay Opetaia from Down Under certainly made a name for himself over in Saudi Arabia by getting rid of his IBF belt and taking care of business on that night of redemption, or whatever it's called, Day of Redemption. Anyway, so up comes the name Dmitry Bivol. Lightweight champion Dmitry Bivol and former IBF cruiserweight champ Jay Opetaia likely will never fight as fans had hoped they would, according to BoxingNews24.com. We saw in Bivol's last fight against Lyndon Arthur that he doesn't possess the punching power or the mentality to deal with an aggressive fighter who's attacking him with hard shots. Bivol was backing off when Arthur was taking the fight to him, and he didn't look comfortable dealing with the pressure. If Bivol fought Opetaia, he would be under constant duress. Opetaia is 24-0, 19 knockouts, is too big and too strong for Bivol, says this author, 22-0, by the way, 11 knockouts, who is small enough to compete at 168 if he wants to. The 32-year-old Bivol doesn't possess the side or pack enough power to go up to 25 pounds and take on Opetaia at cruiserweight. Opetaia will likely move up to heavyweight in 3 or 4 more fights after he exhausts his best at cruiserweight. The fights that fans would like to see the 28-year-old Australian involved in at cruiserweight are against a few of these fighters. Let's mention a few before he moves up to see some of those heavyweights. Chris Billiam Smith, Richard Rick Pork, Miras Bright Ice, that'd be a rematch. Gilberto Ramirez, to name a few. He's simply too powerful for Dmitry Bivol, says this author. I know the Saudi Arabians are trying to push Jay Opetaia and Dmitry Bivol together. Yeah, Opetaia is too big and too powerful for him, said Gareth A. Davies about the former IBF cruiserweight champ. The punches that Opetaia was hitting his opponent, El Zorro, during the Day of Reckoning event last December, it would have been too difficult for Bivol to take without folding quickly. Joe Smith Jr. had Bivol hurt during their fight in 2019, and he's not nearly the puncher as the southpaw Opetaia. They look similar when they were standing next to each other. There's a picture out there that the Saudis put out. We're already talking about in the industry. Jay Opetaia is stepping up to heavyweight because he carries a huge amount of power, Gareth said. He's rated by most people as the number one cruiserweight in the world. We probably need to see that in over 2 or 3 fights. Let's see him wreck a few people, said Gareth. He's got to get in with Rick Pork and Chris Billam-Smith, or maybe Artur Goulamirian. Maybe just prove something. It's fair to say that none of those cruiserweights will want anything to do with Opetaia due to the risk that he presents, which means the only way of those fighters going to be tempted to face him is if the Saudis offer big money to them. Without them making it financially worthwhile to take on Opetaia, he's likely going to leave the division soon and head towards heavyweight, where he'll have a better chance of getting interesting fights. Certainly against some of those up-and-coming Americans. Having said that, if he's suddenly invited up as a wild card in the heavyweight Super League in Saudi Arabia, he'll take it, said Gareth. There's probably 3 or 4 times more money than what he's earning at cruiserweight. This is a business as much as a sport. Money talks, and it always tells. So that's the dollar chain that he's going to be on. It's just too outlandish for Bivol to go up and face Opetaia, especially when there's that legacy fight up there at 175 with Better BF. And Better BF is promoted by Bob Arum, who obviously has a relationship with the Saudis as well, initially through Tyson Fury. So if only there's one fight between Bivol and Better BF, then Dmitry could be tempted to face Opetaia unless he moves down to 168 to go after the big names in that division. Again, says Gareth, if you look at the money chain and you look at the business routes, and for me, that's the fight, Better BF versus Bivol, and that happens next. One quick little story to conclude today's show. A Cuban, former highly decorated amateur, Yoan Lis Hernandez, 2-0, 2 knockouts out of Cuba, will make his highly anticipated U.S. debut on January 20th in a 10-round middleweight main event bout that will take place in Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood, Florida. His opponent will be former world title challenger Vicente Rodriguez, 42-14-1, fighting out of Argentina. Hernandez, by the way, has a manager. His name is Robert Davalli, and he is promoted by Chris Lawrence, Heavyweight Factory Promotions. And Leon Margulis and Luis de Cubas Sr. out of Warriors Boxing. So he's got a good team behind him. Rodriguez has much more professional experience, as I just noticed, than Hernandez, but Lawrence believes in the talent level of Hernandez. When asked just how good he thinks Hernandez is, he replied, I honestly believe he's a professional world-level talent right now. So there you go. All the news fit to print here on Talkin Fight. Thanks very much for joining me. Appreciate it very much. Remember to like, share, subscribe. Hit that notification bell. We'll see you 11 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. Please join me for more fight news from around the world, more headlines from around the world, more he said, she said type stuff. And as it just gets more interesting outside the ring than inside the ring these days, in the cold winter months from the Mecca of boxing, Toronto, Canada.